Hi, Gary here, and today I want to cover word pictures. So what is a word picture? Well, the word picture is what the examiner tells you at the beginning of the test to set out what's going to happen and what stage is at and things like that. So I'm going to go through each little bit individually so that you can understand each part. The first part is the stage of the pupil. So the examiner would explain what stage the pupil's at. If it was a first phase, there are two different choices. It could be a beginner, a total beginner who's never had any lessons before, or it could be partly trained. And partly trained, a lot of people get confused with partly trained. They think it means partly trained in the subject that they're going to teach. And it's not. It's partly trained in driving. The subject is always brand new. So the first thing they'll tell you is the stage of the pupil, either beginner or partly trained. Then they're going to go on to the reason that they've come to see you. You have to remember that this pupil you've never met before. It's not a pupil that you had last week or you've been teaching for a while. It's a pupil that's completely new to you, and they'll have come to you because their other instructor's on holiday or is off sick or she's off sick, and that's the reason why they're coming to you today. The other reason that they would come to you is because they've been driving the same kind of car, so they would also mention that they were familiar with the vehicle, or as familiar as they would be for a pupil at that stage. So you know that you've never met this person before, you can't assume you know what they've done, and that they have driven the car that you're driving. The next thing is the subject that you want to be teaching. So they would explain what the subject is, and it's important to listen carefully to that because people can get confused over what subject it is they're going to be teaching, and there's nothing worse than teaching the wrong subject in a part 3 because they can only grade you on the subject that you're going to be teaching. So if, for example, they said to you, I'd like you to teach me about approaching and turning left and right from major to minor roads, and then you ended up teaching T-junctions, that would be completely wrong. So listen carefully to the way they explain what the subject is that you're going to be teaching. The next one is the route directions. So the examiner would always be in control of the route. You don't have to worry about choosing a route, but they would explain to you that they would give you the route directions and that you would have to repeat them back to the examiner, or repeat them back to the pupil, should I say, in the way that you would to a real pupil. So they might do that in shorthand. They might say something like next left, next right, and you've got to turn that into proper terminology, which I will cover in a separate video. They're also going to tell you their name, and usually the examiner would choose their own first name for the first phase. This is Rory, he's just trying to help me a little bit. He's seen a dog out the window. See Rory, there you go. So they're going to tell you that their name, as I say. Usually they'll use their own name for the first phase. In the second phase they would usually change the name so that you could see them as a different pupil completely. And then they would just ask, have you got any questions? Now the questions are about the word picture, not to the pupil, because as of yet you've not met the pupil, so you are allowed to ask questions at that point about anything to do with the word picture to the examiner. So say, for example, you weren't too sure what the subject was, you could ask that again. Usually though you'll have been quite clear about what the examiner said, and so you wouldn't need to ask any questions, and you would say no, that's fine, and then the examiner would go into roll, and at that point you've got to start the lesson, and I'm going to cover that in another video. So I'm just going to show you that on a slideshow, so you've got it all laid out in front of you. You can follow the steps, but just to briefly go through that. So stage of the pupil, the reason that they're going to come to you, are they familiar with the vehicle, the subject that you're going to be teaching, the route directions, and the pupil's name. Okay, so for the word picture, you've got the stage of the pupil, the reason that they're taking lessons with you, are they familiar with the vehicle, the subject that you're going to teach, the route directions, which will come from the examiner, you've got to repeat them back, and the name of the pupil, and finally any questions. I just want to introduce you to, if you've not seen any videos before, to the motto that I use, which is 20 letters, 10 words, but only one meaning. If it is to be, it is up to me. So prepare to pass.